Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny White.
How are you this morning?
Good, busy morning. It's graduation day. Happy graduation to my daughter, Carson. She's graduating.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, so I'm proud of her. She's going to go on and play collegiate soccer and pursue dental hygiene.
Very nice. Now, where are you going?
Well, she's actually going to go play at Rose State. And they have they have one of the two dental hygiene programs there also. They're in OU Medical. So I'm proud of her. I'm proud of her for still wanting to play soccer and be a college athlete and have her head screwed on straight and kind of have some goals. So
Well, look at her dad.
Happy for her.
Look at her dad. She's got a good dad. You know, I guess I'm expecting that to happen. Right?
I won't tell Lauren that she didn't say anything.
Well, that's true. And she has a good dad and a good mom. Lauren just isn't on the podcast with us this morning. Therefore, I was just deferring to you. But yes, Lauren is also an excellent mom. So with two good parents, it would be very hard to expect Carson to be anything other than outstanding.
Yeah.
Did I do better that time?
Pretty good. Good. I'm happy for her. She's pretty much straight A student. Good girl altogether. So, and she made all state soccer this year.
Nice. Now I don't know what that exactly means though. So fill me in just a little.
Well, that's just where the coaches all get together and kind of pick an all-star team out of everybody in the state. So
nice. Yeah. Well, that's super nice.
Yeah.
Well,
So
but then your older son is an accomplished golfer.
Yeah. So there we go.
Good for you, old man. Pretty soon you guys will be empty nesters. What are you going to do then?
I'll be fixing everybody's stuff. That's probably what I'll be doing. Same thing.
I know what you're going to do. You're going to get a real ID so you can travel.
Yeah. Definitely not.
I had to wear my freedom t-shirt because I wore my do not comply t-shirt on Wednesday. Dang it. So I had to bring out the freedom t-shirt for today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I'm glad, Jenny, that we're talking about this subject today because I think so many people are just so complacent. You know, they don't realize that this is literally just the jumping off point to just total authoritarianism or totalitarianism or something like that.
Well, I think people are confused too, because you told me after going to the airport last weekend that now they have two lines, one for the conformists and one for the nonconformists.
Yeah.
So, well, Twila's in we have a nationally known expert on the subject of our real ID today, and it's Twila Brase, who is co-founder and director of the Citizens Council for Health Freedom, and she's going to be on with us this morning, and she's in the green room, so I'm going to go ahead and pull her in, but we can't see her. So, good morning, Twila. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. I just can't see you.
Well, I wonder why. Oh, well.
And now we can see you.
There we go.
I thought I had clicked that button, but I guess not.
Good morning. How are you
I'm
today?
good. I'm good. I'm glad to be here to talk about Real ID or the
I have to
national
tell you,
ID. Mhm.
we both are super glad to have you here. And we're
Yeah.
so thankful for you coming on and taking the time to talk to us, because this is bad. I mean, this is not a good thing. So let me ask you this to kind of jump off into it to get going. How did you first get into the study of Real ID? What made you go,
Well, I think, it probably started amazingly in 1997 before Real ID ever started, because at that time, the governor of Minnesota, a Republican by the name of Arnie Carlson, wanted to do a pilot project called the Min Card. And the Min Card was going to have access to your medical records, to your phone, to your workstation, to your bank. It was, and then of course it was also for your driver's license. And being a follower of Christ, this all rather alarmed me. And so that was the beginning, and that was defeated. But then when it came back in a way that I recognize it, because it was years after it had actually been passed into law before I knew that it existed. But when it came back in 2015 and President Obama heralded, claimed that if you don't have a Real ID in 2016, you won't be able to fly. And the reason that became visible at that time is because the media picked it up. So when it became law in 2005, the media did not pick it up. When the first rule was issued telling states to comply with Real ID, the media did not pick it up, but the states said no. But actually, that's true. I totally forgot about it. In 2008, there was a discussion on the Minnesota floor, and Minnesota legislators said no to it, like about 30 other states of legislators did back then. But after Obama made that call in late 2015, and Minnesota, the Republicans in particular in Minnesota, pulled out
no,
legislation.
not the Republicans.
Yes, the Republicans. Yeah, pulled out legislation to make it happen in the state of Minnesota. For 2 years, we fought them to the mat. And the first year we won, and the second year we didn't. The chamber was for it. A conservative organization in our state was for it, testified for it. Conservatives used that testimony to push it. Republicans, I should say, used that testimony to push it. and so, then, we've been fighting it ever since. But of course, now is when it has raised its head again, right after COVID. So now we are the head or the leading organization fighting it in the country, not just in Minnesota.
Well, and we're so grateful for you. And I think, a friend of mine who awakened me to this right back when you were talking about it. So in 2008, she started talking about it, K Beach, and was big here in Oklahoma, pushing back against it. And she actually, I believe it was 2010 and 2012, we voted against it and then did another resolution against it. And now all of a sudden, over the years, and somebody will have to chime in to catch me up on exactly what year it was. But, then we decided we didn't want to do that anymore, and that Real ID was all okay.
Well, these are different people that come in. They have different knowledge bases. They might have different viewpoints, right? And they have different, they're living in a different world, right? And so at the bottom line for us, it's about what does the Constitution say and what kind of oath did you take, right, to defend it. And so this is very clearly against constitutional rights. And even so we created, I don't know if you have been to our website, refuserealid.org, but on that website, we have a new timeline of Real ID, starting from before the law ever passed to the now deadline for the progressive enforcement of Real ID for the next 2 years. That's why they have 2 lines at the airport, because they're doing progressive enforcement for 2 years. And and they didn't put the hammer down on May 7th because that rule that they issued in January, the progressive enforcement rule, talks about how bad it would be at the airport if they had just said no fly, on May 7th if you didn't have a real ID. Even though you might recall that Secretary Kristi Noem on April 11th said to the world, if you come to the airport without a real ID on May 7th, you will not be able to travel. This was a lie, and it was something she knew was not true, not only because of the progressive enforcement rule, which is all about the airports and stopping disruption at the airport and making sure there aren't delays at the airport, right? But also because there are 16 different identification documents, including passports and passport cards that people can use. So she was just trying to scare people into submission. And this is really terrible to see from the Trump administration and from people who call themselves Republicans, who have sworn an oath to the Constitution to protect us, right? So it's terrible to see.
My eyes are rolling so hard, I'm getting a headache.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to backtrack real quick, Twila. That 2005 law, who wrote that? Do you know? And was that it was in the House, I believe, and was it from a Republican?
I do believe, if I'm correct, that's interesting because it doesn't come to mind. I haven't thought about it for a long time. I think it was Sensenbrenner. I think.
Yeah, that's who it was. Who it was.
Yeah. And so, but, on the floor of the Senate during that discussion in the middle of the night, because it came as an amendment to a national defense spending bill, and it came in the middle of the night. Senator Lamar Alexander from Tennessee, he said, this is a national identification card. We have not talked to the American people about this. I'm not comfortable doing this without a public debate. He's a Republican, right?
Yes.
Patty Murray, she's a Democrat. And she said, haven't voted on this, hasn't been to conference, has a Fourth Amendment privacy implications. She wasn't comfortable with it either. But of course, it did get passed that night as part of that national spending bill.
Wow.
So let me back up and ask you a question I feel like is really important because I know what happened when Noam came out and played the big hammer. And it really, it caused people to get upset with my sister and I even had like a little argument about she flies all the time but you had, and I'm coming out, well, you have to get one, and I'm like, no, I don't have to get one. And I think people, and I want to get into all of that here in a minute, but what I want you to cover really fast, because you said you're a follower of Christ and this bothered you. Please explain, because I've done a terrible job at this. Please explain why Christians should be concerned.
Well, I suppose there are two thoughts probably amongst Christians, but I think they should only have one thought. But I think there are two. And one of them is that they understand Revelations. They understand and they have heard about 666 and the inability to buy or sell without the number, right? They have heard that. And some of them are like, well, this is coming anyway. Why fight it, right? And others are, we are called to righteousness. We are called to truth. We are called to fight the battles. Ultimately, in world terms, we don't win, but in God's terms, we do, because he's king, right? And so this is all part of his plan, but that doesn't mean that we should not fight evil. And this is evil, because this is tyranny. These are tyrants. This plan here, I think what I probably should do is just really explain what the real ID is.
Okay,
from the
good.
get-go, rather than having people make guesses, because I haven't really explained it. Okay. And so I just want to tell people that at refuserealid.org, you can find some of this history and all of these documents. But the thing to understand about Real ID is it's not what you think it is. So it is not just a state issued identification card or driver's license with a star on it. It is a national ID. It has been federalized. It has been put under federal control. And actually, it's been put under federal control by compliant states. So, as I said, when Obama said that in 2015 and totally scared the American public, and suddenly the public was going after their legislators and saying, fix this. I need to fly. I've got grandchildren to see. I've got vacations to take. Well, you know, I got business, right? And when that happened, then the legislators, rather than standing up for their people, simply bowed to the Real ID and gave over control to the federal government. So the Real ID is a national identification card and system. And most importantly, it is a system. And it is a federal takeover of state and individual sovereignty. It is a violation of states' rights, and it is a violation of individual rights under the Constitution. And so in 2017, just after Trump got into office, 116 state legislators from Pennsylvania, 116 legislators from Pennsylvania, they contacted Trump with a letter, and they said this usurps states' rights. This violates individual privacy rights. And this is an unfunded mandate. And basically telling Trump to like call it off. Right? And I don't know if they ever got a response, but the fact of the matter is that today all 50 states have made their laws compliant with the federal Real ID Act. And that means with the federal Real ID rules. And that means that every time the federal government says jump, they say how high. And so anytime the federal government changes the rules, anytime the Secretary of Homeland Security says, well, we don't need it just for flight. I think we need it for medical care. You know, about 50% of all healthcare is funded by government. I think we should also impose the Real ID and require it for access to medical care. So I think what you need to understand about the Real ID and the law is the secretary could indeed do that. Because what the law says, and so I'll just say a few things about what the rule says and what the law says now. So it's a national ID. It's issued by the state. It's under federal control. And so what does the law say? Well, the law says that there are official purposes of the Real ID. And right now, those purposes, according to the law, are access to certain federal facilities, access to nuclear facilities, and access to commercial flight. And then it adds these words: and any other purposes that the Secretary of Homeland Security shall determine. So what this means is that the Secretary could determine that buying a gun requires a Real ID, buying ammunition, opening a bank account, using an ATM, getting married, you name it. The Secretary, and according to the rule issued in 2008, Homeland Security does not think they have to go back to Congress or the president to expand the required uses of the Real ID. Now, there's two other things I want you to know, and that is that of biometrics and digital. So on December 5th, 2023, the organization of the state DMVs testified before Congress. This organization is called the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, or AMVA. So AMVA testified to Congress in testimony they titled Beyond Real ID. And they said that their plans are to digitize the Real ID, put it on our phones, and have remote real-time access to it. Essentially setting up, of course, the American version of a China-like social credit system. That's what's going on here, right? But the other thing that really ties it into what China does is the fact that the rule requires the use of biometrics, so body parts. And when you think about biometrics, you should think about the fact that what the government has said is that it has claimed a right to collect and catalog our body coordinates for their control and tracking. Because see, that is exactly how this works. That's how the cameras at U.S. ports, at airports, and other places, once they have cataloged your face, right? The cameras that are biometric cameras can scan the crowd, and they can figure out exactly who you are. Now, this is a unconstitutional requirement, right? We have a right to not have the government catalog the coordinates of our body. And the rule says they have to start with the face. So that's a requirement on the states. You have to have a biometric photo. But the rule says that other biometrics could be added. So they could add your fingerprint, your palm print, your iris scan, or even they could digitize your DNA. Now, of course, your body parts you cannot change. Your social security number you can change, right? But you can't change your body parts. So if you tie all of that together and you know that it's under federal control, you realize that there is a digital biometric controlled net that is tightening around the American people. And many people are just looking at this like a state driver's license, or they're looking at it like, well, this is more convenient, or they're saying, well, this is great. We just got a little added security so we can keep illegals out of the country. And I'll stop here after I just say this one thing. But the thing that I tell people is that if we had another Biden administration, a Harris administration, an AOC administration, they would probably do exactly what California, Minnesota, and a total of 7 states are doing around this country, is they are giving driver's licenses to illegals. And so all you have to have is a different person in the government. In the president's office, as president, to just decide to give everybody a real ID. And now, because the states have allowed the federal government to federalize the ID and the driver's license, then there is no longer the protection that is afforded to every individual in their state. So 50 states of protection have been removed with succumbing or conforming to the Real ID Act. So this is not a small thing. And a lot of people think this is a small thing. And on Twitter or X, you will see a lot of people who in their description of themselves have MAGA or MAHA, right? And they basically say, hey, people, it's been law for 20 years. Get it done, right? And I think they just assume Trump is in office, everything's good. And they are not seeing what this is.
Wow. Well, Twila, one thing that really strikes me, I work in the finance world, and one thing that strikes me is when you said that the Secretary of Homeland Security is the one that can literally make the decision on what's included, excluded, whatever, that just rings bells in my head to the whole KYC process, which is know your customer. That's what's done in every financial institution, whether you get a bank account to a broker account, your retirement accounts, whatever it is, you have to fill out a whole bunch of information. And that KYC whole process came in as part of the Patriot Act. So I can literally see someone like the Secretary of Homeland Security going right into the entire financial system and tying all of your transactions or wallets or whatever into the Real ID at some point because it's necessary. I mean, I can literally see that that's already been paved through the KYC and the Patriot Act in the past.
Well, absolutely. And people say to us, well, you're a health freedom organization. What on earth are you doing in this fight? Right. And I'm telling you, there are so many connections. And I just have to tell people, I just see them, please see them. So we actually believe that the Real ID, the litany of the reasons why we're in, I've said a few of them. The fact that it will be no card, no care. I'm just certain of it, right? And I believe that to get everybody to succumb, they will add health care because not everybody needs to fly, but everybody needs a doctor, right? And but also then the biometrics, claiming our body as theirs, as their property to database and use to control and to find us and do surveillance and all that kind of thing. But in addition to that, once you digitize your identity, then what we're talking about is connecting it to all the electronic health records and the electronic health record system. And a lot of people, a lot of your listeners believe that HIPAA protects their privacy. And HIPAA has never, ever protected their privacy. It was never built for privacy. And I always keep next to me my book, Big Brother in the Exam Room. And this is the history of how HIPAA was used to grab your data. And then Obama's electronic health record mandate to digitize your data.
Yeah.
And then the government has funded something called, and I encourage your viewers to go to ehealthexchange.org, ehealthexchange.org. And this is a tool of the federal government where they are giving software to clinics and hospitals all across the country, and once you're into the eHealth Exchange, if the doctor, not you, your clinic, your hospital, your state health information exchange, once you've become part of the eHealth Exchange, wherever you are, wherever your patient is, you can pull the data. So if you're a Washington resident and then you go to Florida and you need healthcare, right? They'll just tap into the eHealth Exchange and pull your records from Washington. And you didn't have any choice about this. And you don't have any choice about who gets to see those records when they pull them. The clerks, the lab techs, the physical therapists. Physical therapists have told me that if people only knew what they could see about the person, because they have access to the full medical record, every detail, every nuance, everything that they've done that's been reported, every medication that they've gotten, every procedure. And they think that patients would be horrified to know what they can see about the patient that they're treating. So when you think about digitizing the Real ID, and then you just hook it into the system, and likely the way it would be hooked into the system is that they would use it as a unique patient identifier.
Yeah.
And the unique patient identifier, Ron Paul, well, it's in HIPAA. It's in the HIPAA law, and that is part of Hillary Care. But they got into HIPAA, and it's the only identifier in HIPAA that has not been fully implemented because Ron Paul stopped it for years, one appropriation bill after the next. And then his son, Rand Paul, has taken up that banner and stopped it, one appropriation bill after the next. And so we have worked with Rand Paul. We weren't quite here in a way we could work with Ron Paul in the very beginning. And so I think that, we have stopped it appropriation bill after appropriation bill, but I think they would probably love to just use the Real ID to become the unique patient identifier.
Well, but it's unique though, Twila. I mean, it's personally identifiable information that they just pull apart in the record. So you can never have your name attached to the data. They can't ever find that.
What do you say?
I get so
I'm sorry.
tired of hearing that
sarcastic,
argument.
Twila.
I'm being sarcastic
sarcastic.
because they say all the time, but it's your personal, and this is de-identified data, and we're not going to attach it. And they do that all the time, and people just go, okay. I mean, how do you get through to these people to make them understand that once they know enough about you, there is no de-identification involved?
So I think there's two things to understand. So HIPAA is long-standing, it's long, and it's complicated. But at the bottom line, there is no patient consent for data sharing within the healthcare industry and their business associates. So in 2010, and by the way, and that's identified information. That is not de-identified. Okay, so in 2010, HHS put out a regulation, and they numbered the number of different covered entities, which are like labs, clinics, hospitals, nursing home facilities, whatever, all within that realm of providers. So the number of covered entities, which was like a 702,000, right? And then they added the 1.5 million business associates. And I want to be clear that all these entities, 2.2 million entities, are filled with people, hundreds of thousands of people. So it's 2.2 million entities that could have access to your information identified without your consent if those who hold your information, your doctor, your clinic, your lab, your health plan, whomever, choose to share it. They have the right under HIPAA to share it without your consent unless there is a stronger state law that prevents them from doing so. And Minnesota has the only stronger state law to do it. And it has regularly been violated by the health plans through a loophole that they plan to exploit, I believe, if they were ever sued. And the Supreme Court in Minnesota validated their loophole. And when a Democrat in this state, who is a big privacy person, figured out what the Supreme Court had done, she changed the law, and we helped her change the law so that we eliminated the loophole. But they've been violating it for years. And so you have no privacy in the exam room because of HIPAA and because of the mandated electronic health record, which is not there. It is not there because your doctor, your hospital wanted it. Your doctor, your hospital either had paper records or they had electronic record systems they liked and they created and that were special for them and did exactly what they wanted them to do. But when Obama did the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act exactly 4 weeks after his first inauguration, he created the mandate for the government certified electronic health record and the requirement that it must be meaningfully used. And there are meaningful use regulations, 3 of them, that all require, essentially, the biggest thing about meaningful use is that they have to use the electronic health record to report data to the government, to the health plans, to others. So this is what your government has done to you and claimed to be about your privacy and convenience, but it's really all a data grab, which I describe in my book, Big Brother in the Exam Room. And I had a Democrat who doesn't agree with me, who's in power as a legislator, whose whole job is data, who told me it's the best history of what happened that he's ever read. But he doesn't agree with where we want to go, which is privacy, because his job is in data, right? But I wrote the book because I thought people have to know what happened here, and people have to know what this really is.
Well, and I've got to ask you this question. So one of the things that I've heard over and over again when I've been out stumping against this, I'm sorry, more like screaming against this, people say, but Jenny, they know everything about you anyway. They have already all the information that they're going to have on you. It's not like this is anything new. And it's usually followed with ... And it's much easier for me to get on the airplane.
Yes, well, here's the fact of the matter. And this is what the public misses. If they are mandating you to do something, they don't have it.
That's a great point.
They don't have it. So people have said to me, well, the passport is a federal identification card. Yeah, true. The passport is meant to get you out of the country and back into the country. End of statement. You don't have the same requirements for the Real ID. And so the passport is an external passport. But with Real ID, they're trying to create an internal passport.
Now I think I understand what you're saying because, okay, let me see if I understand what you're saying. So when you said earlier, you said, and it makes sense, if you have one card, right, then they just start saying you use the one card. Oh, look, now we're going to use the one card for this. Now we're going to, but your passport doesn't have that functionality. You can't keep adding stuff to that passport, because my argument was, well, I don't even know that I want to get a passport, because I know the one time I did get a passport, I know they did facial recognition. And so I'm just super hateful about getting my picture. I don't want facial recognition. In Oklahoma, you have to add your thumbprint to get your driver's license. And now they're doing facial recognition photography. And I'm trying to figure out how my driver's license isn't a real ID if, and this happened to me, and this is why I got so upset and started, reinvigorating against the real ID. I was in Vegas coming back from a trip, and I had my boarding pass and I had my Oklahoma driver's license out. And I handed the TSA agent my boarding pass, and he goes, no, just let me see your ID. He scanned the back of my ID and went, go on. And I went, nope, that's a bad thing. So can you kind of parse out what I just said? Because I vomited up a whole bunch of stuff, but can you kind of fix that for me?
Well, when I said internal passport, the idea here is that there will be this one card for every American, controlled by the federal government and used for whatever the federal government says it has to be used for. Thus, a violation of states' rights and your rights, because as you might recall, it was the states that very gingerly decided there should be a federal government. It was a very big discussion between the founders as to whether such a thing should ever happen, because they were concerned. And so, this does become an internal passport with the secretary given that kind of power. And the fact that they want to digitize it, the fact that they want to have central bank digital currency, right? And there are those people at WEF and other places who have said, well, we can't have cash because we don't know what they're using the money for. Well, they don't have a right to know what we're using the money for. They don't have a right to know where we go. But if you get a digital ID, and there are about 15 different states now that permit you to get a digital ID. According to our research, if you get a digital ID, every time you pull it out for some purpose, it pings the DMV. So if you're at the gun shop and you pull it out to buy a gun, it pings. If you're at a play and they want to see your ID before you can come into the theater, it pings, right? If you're buying a car at some auto dealer, it pings. And so what you're doing is creating in the government a complete record of your, it may not be all the details of your transaction, but there's no reason it wouldn't have to be if it gets integrated with, a digital cash system, right? And so people are walking into this net sort of unwittingly, right? And they're just thinking about convenience and how, and it really started with the credit card. It really did. It started with the credit card. And people don't even understand that our economy is, or our prosperity is less because of the credit card. And our privacy is less because of the credit card. But
well, see, we do here because of Michael.
I see.
Michael makes sure we're all up on that all the time.
But see, now what you said about Oklahoma. So Oklahoma has a resolution. So there's about 8 states that have started to take action to start to extract themselves from Real ID. Oklahoma just introduced a resolution. And so that's a great thing. But Oklahoma,
that was Kendall. Let me pump the senator there. That was Senator Kendall Sacchieri, who is a first-year senator here in Oklahoma, and she was brave enough to go ahead and put this resolution out. And it's sad because fortunately, I'm all okay with this. We're about done at the end of May. They can't go beyond that. And I'm just happy that they're confined to those 4 months, and then we have to get them out. But they're not, they won't take up that resolution. She's the first year and they don't like this anyway. So they're not going to take it up, but she did file it. And thank you for bringing that up.
Yes. But what is Oklahoma doing adding a fingerprint? So Oklahoma now has 2 biometrics. They've claimed a right to, collect and catalog not only the face, but the fingers, right? And claim them for their own. It's really unconstitutional. And one of the things that we are doing with Real ID is we have sent out letters to all 50 attorneys general in this country, looking to see what we can get the attorneys general to do, because this is within their bailiwick, right? They are supposed to keep federalism intact. That is one of the things, that's one of their jobs. And by federalism, I mean the separation between the states and the federal government. So we are going to be pursuing particularly those of the Republican order, and those that have been, just because you're Republican doesn't mean you're conservative, as I can see that you probably understand. But there are certainly Republican AGs that have done some really great things to try to stop the Biden administration, or, to go after this, that, or the other thing, or to protect the people in their state. And so we will see what transpires with that. But your understanding of what the card is, they want everybody to have the Real ID, because they cannot impose the system fully until everybody has the Real ID. And as Congressman Thomas Massey from Kentucky has said in a tweet, until they have everybody in the system, you will not understand what their plans are. But we already do have the testimony in Congress from the DMVs, because their plans are to digitize and have real-time remote access to this ID, which of course they could just shut off. You're misbehaving, or let's just think that we get to that point and we have an AOC administration, right? Well, it will be used to keep you in your 15-minute cities. They will know if you leave, because it'll probably be on the transponders on the highway and on the toll booths and everything else. They'll be able to know when you leave. They might be able to use it for, well, how many carbon, taxes should we put on this person for where they're going, or what they're doing, or what kind of things that they're buying, because we can see all of this, right? So this is, opening the way to a China-like social credit system for the right tyrant. And I say that, there's no right tyrant, but for the tyrant who really wants to impose tyranny. And these are the Republicans putting it in.
But that was why I liked what you said, the right tyrant, because we seem to feel like an R by somebody's name, for those of us who consider ourselves conservative or are for conservative principles, even though if you ask people today what that is, they'll go, it's very hard for people to know what those are. They just kind of feel them anymore. It's very important for people to understand, and you said this earlier, and I want to back up to ping off of what you said. You said so many people think, oh, it's the Trump administration, it's going to be okay. And which is why you said the right tyrant. People don't understand that once this is in, it's just as good for the actual frontal assault tyrant as it is for our rear assault tyrants that usually have ours by their name. So it doesn't matter. Once it's in, right?
Well, it certainly can be taken out, but
for sure.
But whoever wants to use it, and whoever has it in mind to use it, right? And when I said right tyrant, I just meant the tyrant who decides that this is perfect for them, right? I wasn't actually implicating Republicans, but the fact of the matter, it started with Republicans,
right,
in 2005, and then it was pushed by Obama in 2015, and now we've got Kristi Noem in the Trump administration lying to the American public to get them to all comply. Right. And so this is a very bipartisan push by people who don't have our best interests as a country, and don't have our best interests as a free people in mind. And they don't seem, it doesn't matter if there's an R and a D. And in some cases, it doesn't matter on the other side either, because Laurel Libby in Maine, Representative Laurel Libby, she's got the first bill to actually extract the state from Real ID. So to not issue them, it is a Democrat state, and there were Republicans who wanted to be her co-authors, but she said no. And so she is a Republican author with 5 Democrat co-authors. So this is a bipartisan issue on both sides. Those who want freedom and those who want to destroy freedom, you know, and give us reasons like security and safety and health.
And convenience. Don't
and
forget
convenience. And convenience, yep, to get rid of our freedom and autonomy.
Well,
So,
I
I'm sorry,
wanted to
go
go
ahead,
back. I wanted to go back to one thing you were talking about there, Twila, with talking about going in the gun shop and the ID pings. You know that. So we're thinking about that in the case of the physical card right now. But let's fast forward 5-10 years, where you did say they're going to digitize that, you know, in one way or another, and get it. It'll probably be on your phone as an app that you agree to the terms and services of the app. Now they have 24/7 surveillance of you to be able to tax you by the mile, you know, the whole 9 yards. I mean, that literally is, in my opinion, what brings in the entire beast mode of this whole thing. Is once they get the car, you're now complacent with the card. Okay, well, let's make it even easier for you. It's completely digitized on your phone. So now they literally have access to you 24/7, everything you say, do, hear, you know, whatever. I mean, that's where I see this going in a very short amount of time.
So I just want to make something clear. The cards today do not have an RFID chip in them. So right now the cards would not ping when you use a Real ID card. But once it's digitized, it would.
Okay.
And then those state DMVs are under the federal government. So the federal government can simply change the rules and say, you know, we really need access to that data. Give us access to the data where all the ping database, right? The what are you using it for database. And so, yeah, I mean, that is where it's going. That is where, I'm not going to say that's where it's going. That is where they want it to go. But we're here as an organization to stop them from where they want to go. And when I went to Washington, D.C., so I was just there yesterday. I was just there for the week yesterday on this issue, as well as some health freedom issues, more obviously health freedom issues. But when I went there at the beginning of February, 3 months ago, and people and congressmen and their staff and everybody said, well, you know, I don't know that we're going to do anything with this because we're not hearing from anybody. And I left Washington saying, well, that's going to change. So, you know, we put up 3 billboards. We created the refuse refuserealid.org website. We've created these documents on there. And I encourage your viewers to go to that site because we have 5 documents. I think they're like all in a row. And one of them is 7 reasons to repeal. One of them is make the switch, how to lose your Real ID and get back. Yes, this is the page right there. And if you just roll down, you just roll on down. So there are action items you can do here in links, but right here, right? So right here, 7 reasons to act, you know, to refuse it or to repeal, the lose the Real ID, switch back to freedom. And on the back of that one are bit by bit, number by number instructions in going to your DMV. The practical guide are all the 5 things. It's just one side, one page, all the practical things to deal with the Real ID. The You Can Fly has some quotes, lets you know why it's constitutional, unconstitutional, lets you know that you can use the passport. There are 16 total IDs, but then inside of it, we have key quotes right out of the regulation, because we did it to bulletproof our billboards. Because after Kristi Noem said, if you come on May 7th without a Real ID, you will not be able to travel, I thought our first billboard had gone up. And I thought, am I wrong? Is the emperor have no clothes here, or what's going on? So I went through the rule again and decided to write down some key points, which shows you how they planned not to put the hammer down on May 7th. And then the last one is the timeline. the history of Real ID from the first 9/11 report all the way to May 5th, 2027, which is when they want it fully imposed. And and the next 2 years when we're going to make sure it isn't, to educate the American people about the lies and the great deception and how they're just being pulled in like sheep into this because they're not being told the truth. It's a big job, but that is the way to stop them, between the states and the people together working to stop them. And I would encourage your viewers to make the switch as soon as possible, because we just heard from someone in Indiana who said that they went to the DMV to make the switch because they have a right in Indiana. There's 45 states you have a right to have a standard driver's license. Only 5, and they're all Republican, where you don't where you don't get anything but a real ID. So in Indiana, she or he or whoever it was had a right to a standard state driver's license and went to make the switch. But the DMV said, we're moving to the real ID. You have a real ID. If you have a real ID, you cannot make the switch. Only people who still have a standard driver's license can keep the standard driver's license. Now, I would submit that I'll bet that their laws and rules do not let them do that. And so we will help that person and see what the laws and rules say and actually give that to them as ammunition to go back and say, yeah, no, that's not the right I have, and see what can happen. But there you go. Here's our website with the tools. And, if there's another tool that we need, we'd be more than willing to put it up there, because it's a moving target. Here's our billboard for people who might be interested. We actually, this one was up in Texas, and then we put one up in Florida. Actually, they're all donor funded. So it's donors who want to get this message across. And then we put one up in Rand Paul's hometown, because he is Homeland Security chair in the U.S. Senate. He had the only repeal Real ID bill in 2017. And so far, he has hardly said boo, and we have not been able to get in to his office. So I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but everybody could certainly ask him kindly to do a hearing on Real ID and to shut this thing down. He has the power. As chair of Homeland Security to do something really big here. And I'm not sure what's going on, but maybe he's waiting.
Well, that's very disappointing and concerning. I mean, because Rand is one of
how his dad was such a champion.
And he's been such a champion.
He's
been against the unique patient identifier. The last time when we almost lost it, when they see what we have on the unique patient identifier in the appropriation bills is a prohibition language. So they are prohibited from using any appropriated funds to create the unique patient identifier. And the last time that we almost lost that, he went and personally, this is our understanding, that he went and personally talked to the chairman, and I got them to agree to add the prohibition back into the bill. So this is a surprise, but maybe he has a plan. But I think, for everybody who's listening, to tell their state representatives and senators to extract them from Real ID, it's a violation of states' rights. It's a violation of their individual privacy rights. It's leading to a social credit system in America for the tyrant who decides to take the powers and run with them. And so everybody needs to get rid of their Real ID, and everybody needs to contact their state legislators and their members of Congress. They have to feel it. They have to hear it. They have to hear it from the people.
So I want to make sure that people understand, because what happens here in Oklahoma is our Oklahoma legislators, so many of them, not all of them, but so many of them, like to believe that Oklahoma is an extension of the federal government, and that everything that they do comes underneath the federal government. They either have no idea what the 10th Amendment is, or they can't count high enough to get to 10, or they just haven't read through the amendments. I don't know what happens here, but they constantly are saying things to us like, well, we can't do the feds are telling us to do this, so we have to do this. And please please tell us the argument to give to our uninformed people, elected and bureaucratic people, about why the Oklahoma does not have to do what the feds tell us to do.
This was the whole thing with our founders and divided government. This is why the 10th Amendment was added to the Bill of Rights, to make sure, because there were founders who were very concerned that the federal government would overreach beyond the limited powers that they are given in the Constitution. And those are limited powers in the Constitution, to which the Congress has trespassed time and time and time and time again. But that does not mean that the states should not stand up and bring Congress back into where they are supposed to be constitutionally. And so for state legislators to say, well, we can't do this because of the feds, is like, okay, well, so then you have, you've given up your constitutional mandate to actually protect me and this state from an overreaching federal government. This is part of the problem when states take money from the federal government. And this is one of the ways that the federal government gets around the 10th Amendment, is by saying, you can have this money as long as you obey us, right? So state legislators who have no idea about their oath of office, they have no idea what the Constitution says, they have no idea about the 4th Amendment, the 10th Amendment, or any other amendment. I feel like, constituents should come up with a strategy for those who actually don't realize what they're there to do, which is to protect you against an overreaching federal government. And then, of course, to just deal with things at the state level. So there's zero rationale. There's no good rationale. There's no appropriate reason. It's just simply wrong to let the federal government run over the states and run over the people. And the state senators and representatives are supposed to be there to protect their people against the federal government.
Thank you for saying that, because that's my favorite saying. But people have forgotten why they elect these people. And we've said it over and over again. They get up to the House of Legislature, and then they decide that the only thing that makes them worth anything is writing bills, right? And they totally forget that their whole job, their only job, is to protect my freedom, your freedom. That's the whole job. It's not hard if you just think of it as one thing, which is all it is. So thank you for backing me up on that. And I don't know when you have to get off of here, but I do want to ask you one other question. We've pushed back against the Flock is a brand name, but surveillance cameras, ALPRs, we've been trying to push back against those we do every time we can in Oklahoma. And part of the reason we hate them, other than we hate surveillance here on this channel, but part of the reason why we hate them is these police departments have these MOUs that they do under the table with all these other different places. And so they share your data. Your data may be collected in Oklahoma, but you could find it in Puerto Rico, which is where somebody did find, I believe it was an Oklahoma plate in Puerto Rico, in a database in Puerto Rico. So this stuff goes all over everywhere. Right now, are the databases hooked up to share that information at a federal level? Do you know?
So the Secretary of State in Maine, during the hearing on Representative Laura Libby's bill, she said that the federal government cannot currently get access to the data that the DMV collects. But as I said, given that the state has conformed to the federal government, it's only a process probably by which the federal government or the secretary determines that we need access to that data. And so I don't believe that they're currently hooked up, but also when people choose to digitize their license, and if we were to allow them to get what they want, I believe it would be all available digitally. It would be all one big system, right? Because look, the TSA is federal government. The DMVs are state government. The two of them are working together. And the company that does this is, and you can see this at the TSA checkpoints. Just look at the equipment around your TSA agent. The word is IDEMIA. And so IDEMIA does TSA pre-check. IDEMIA does like 40 different driver's licenses, states worth driver's licenses. And they also do TSA pre-check. And they have this, TSA security. And they have this $46 million contract with the TSA. And their whole thing is called augmented authentication. So their plan is biometrics for all. So all you have to do is look up IDEMIA and watch some of their videos to see how they envision being able to map and tell even who you are from 12, 20 or more feet away, because they have the coordinates in their databases. And this is who our federal government is contracting with. So again, it is the federal and the state being meshed here. And the one thing I will say about the states, which is I think we have it in the timeline. I do believe we have it in the timeline, that between the time when the last state in the 2007 to 2009, when the last state said no to the whole thing, right? And 2015, when Obama said you won't be able to fly, during that time, this little 5-member office, Real ID office in the Department of Homeland Security, discovered that they could work with individual DMVs. So these DMVs, against the laws in their own state and behind their governors and behind the legislators, actually used money coming from Homeland Security to build up the Real ID system to about 95% of the way to compliance. And so they went rogue, and they will still go rogue. And what happened in Indiana, I believe, is gone rogue. And, somebody who said, sorry, nope, if you have a Real ID, we won't let you go back. I don't believe that's in the law anywhere. But if it is, they haven't gone rogue, but likely it isn't.
Well, unlikely if that's the case in your state. You just would have to push your legislature to get it out, right?
Right.
We've got to make sure that we're doing this at the state level and telling them, no, we don't have to listen to the feds. And I don't care how much money you're getting. We want out. And that's how we do it, right?
Legislators really only listen when they start hearing from the people, and they get worried that they're in trouble, unless they're a true constitutional legislator who really took their oath of office seriously, right? But others are really, finger to the wind. What's going on here? What do I need to listen to? And they'll often say that if a legislator gets 5 phone calls, it perks up their ears. They start to listen. And I would encourage people to make calls. Emails are fine, but they can be ignored. Calls are much harder to ignore. And you have passion in your voice. You have a different voice. It's not just all words on an email screen, right? So I would encourage people to make calls. That is the most powerful method, of course, and visiting them at home or in their office as well.
Well, there's an election here next year, and we intend to make this an election issue.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because and people seem to watch this program, and so we feel like it's an important thing to get that out there. I do have one other question. I'm sorry to just pepper you with questions, but you're my expert here, and I want to just use as much as I can of your brain. I told you about what happened when I came back from Vegas and they just scanned the back of my driver's license. Well, and as you said, I believe that we have the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. I wrote that down. And I just believe that all of these federal groups, these national groups, it's pernicious. They're evil, and we should write into state law. You cannot be a member of an association, a national association, because that's how all of this stuff seems to get in. They go to their little meetings and go, oh yeah, we need to make every state do that. Oh yes, we mean it. And then we end up being a federated America and not a 50 individual states America. So I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have. But when you look at the driver's license, if they're taking our thumbprint and they're taking our photograph, and it's a facial recognition photograph, and there's a barcode on the back that they can scan, how close are we to real ID with that kind of an identification?
So again, real ID, the idea is to have, it's not about how close are we, it's about how close are they to getting all of us to comply with a single card that they can use, advance, transform, expand, right? So they have a lot of that information. And when you put your card in at the airport, and I encourage everybody to opt out of the facial scan, and really, you just made me think of something, and that is that they're fingerprinting Oklahomans as though they were criminals. Well, the face print, they're doing face printing. They're doing face printing. So the face print is taking the geometry of the face is just like fingerprinting you. So they have declared at 2 levels. So this is not just a simple photograph, right? Because it's biometric, and because they got this whole thing about your eyes, right? Your eye scan, right? And so, because there's 2 of them, one is you look in, which is just your eye scan, and the other one is you stand in front of it, which can also be your eye scan. Anyway, this is all IDEMIA. So I always ask TSA agents questions when I go, and I just asked them one when I came back from Washington last night, and I said, so why don't I have to show the boarding pass? And I regularly ask them, different TSA agents, the same question, because I want to just gather how much information I can. And she goes, yeah, or he goes, yeah, you don't need it anymore because this is all coordinated. It's all tied together in the machine. Well, yes, it's all tied together by IDEMIA. And so this is what IDEMIA has done and is doing for the TSA with their $46 million contract, tying this all together. So the boarding pass, this person said, well, the boarding pass is just to get you on the plane. All we need is the identification card because it's all tied together in the system. So they know you're boarding. They know you're boarding that plane, and it's all tied to your ID. And so this, it's not a done deal. People have to see the net. Right now, they don't see the net. They're being very compliant. They don't see the net. There's a lot of trust in the government. I don't know why after COVID. But they're also afraid they won't get on the plane. And Delta just put up a sign at the Minneapolis airport, and it's one of those tall pop-up banners, and it says, one look and you're on. And it's got a square, and then it's got a silhouette of a person in the square, right? So looking at the camera. And so this is all about desensitizing people. It's also about intimidating people. And there are now 2 cameras. So there's the one at TSA checkpoint, and then there's the one right before you get on the jet bridge. And so some airports have that one too, but particularly if you're leaving the country. And there will be signs about yay big with about 6 paragraphs on them that say, particularly I think for that one, the one at the jet bridge, your photo will be sent to Customs and Border Patrol for comparative purposes, and then it will be deleted. And then at the very bottom line of that, it says you can opt out, just ask an agent. But we're talking about 6 paragraphs down. So if you know you can opt out, if you know how to read, you have all sorts of things, right? To get down to that paragraph and know that you can opt out. And they have this here because they know there's not a law in the land that requires anybody to look at a camera at the airport. There's not a law. And so they don't have a right. But now I just took a picture. I think I can actually show it to you because this is the first, and I'm always taking pictures to find out what am I seeing at the airport. And this was a first, and I thought, oh well, that's interesting. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can wait, but I can't
It
read
says
the
wait.
stuff in yellow.
Wait. To opt out of facial recognition photo, do not insert ID. And it was U.S. Senator Merkley who got caught because he gave him the ID and he said, I'm opting out. And they said, you can't opt out if you've already given us the ID, and we won't let you fly if you don't get in front of that camera. That was absolutely wrong because I have had mine put through there and opted out, and nobody told me that, right? And so this new little sign here, I think, is meant because they have to switch. So yesterday I said, I'm opting out. And she goes, oh, and she pressed a button. She goes, oh, shoot. She goes, I just shut off the camera, move down over to that one. I just shut off the system, move down over to the next one. So I moved down, and then another guy handled me, and he said, step in front of the camera. I said, I'm opting out. He goes, oh, okay. And then, but he didn't shut down. So they have to make this switch. So I think they want you to say from the get-go, I'm opting out, and hold on to your card so they do not, gin up their system for you to step in front, right? I think that's why, and I think it's taking up time because people are opting out. So it's great because they had to put up this really visible sign, whereas typically it's this tiny little sign, black print on a white thing. It's down below at your waist level, So there's enough people opting out that they were forced to put up the sign.
Well, I get that with same trip when that happened in Vegas at our airport here in Oklahoma City. When I got onto the plane, I was just standing there. I don't fly frequently. It's just not my thing. And I was giving the girl my stuff, and she said, here, stand, or she said, move to the left. And I kind of did why. And she said, well, now look at me. And then they took my picture.
Yeah.
And I was so, because I was like, you didn't give me the opportunity. You didn't tell me what you were doing. You just did it. And I wish, Twila, there was some way we could sue these people because it's,
This is the attorneys general, but I will tell you that in the U.S. Senate, Merkley, Markey, Senator Kennedy, it is a bipartisan bill, and it's called something like, because we just found out about it. It's called something like Traveler Privacy Protection Act. And it's all about those cameras in the airport. And we would like to tack on Real ID into that act.
yeah.
And so we'll see where it goes, but it's bipartisan because Merkley, who's a Democrat, he's just constantly doing these Instagrams about what it's like to go through and how he's avoiding the cameras or how they caught him or how they mandated this. He's a U.S. Senator and he is steamed. And we wrote a letter to 8 different senators who were on another letter to the TSA about the cameras. So we know there's a great concern about this. And so I think, something might come out of that bill because it's bipartisan and there are a lot of steamed members of the Senate about these cameras. They need to be as steamed, though, about the Real ID.
Oh, absolutely. I almost wish we could do, state offices of your greater, larger organization, because I do think maybe that would help coordinate a little better, because I'd love to coordinate with you as we're, going through the summer, trying to ramp up some things to push back for next year to come into the legislative system or well, it is kind of a system now. That was kind of a Freudian slip. It's a system.
Well, you certainly can contact us, and Matt, who's our legislative policy director, he would be the one that would be, connecting with you, or you'd be connecting with him and working to see how we could help you.
Well, we would absolutely do that. And I'll work with your office to get some, direct communication, because we do have to make that stop. So as we close out here today, give us the bottom line. I'm going to throw your website up again. If you'll give me just a second, let me get it up so we can see it one more time, and then just go over some things that we need to do as persons. Let's start there.
Yeah.
What do we need to do as persons to protect our own autonomy? Yeah.
So start with just getting educated by going to refuserealid.org. Very importantly, don't get a real ID. If you don't have one, do not get one. If you are worried about flying, get yourself a passport and a passport card and make that application right now. The passport comes pretty quickly. The passport card a little bit more slowly. The card is as big as a driver's license, so you can carry that around easier than a passport. And you don't want to, lose a passport with all those pages, of when you want to leave the country. So, but whatever you do, don't get a real ID. And if you have a real ID, make the switch as soon as possible and send us your stories about what's happening, because we are going to use those stories with your state legislators, and you should use them with your state legislators as well. But also with members of Congress who are interested in reversing this. So stories are really, really important about what's happening to you at the airport, or what's happening to you at the DMV as you try to extract yourself from the Real ID system. And then you just have to understand that they want this very badly, and you must very badly want to stop them. And you actually have a method to do it, and that is by refusing the Real ID. So go to refuserealid.org to get the ammo that you need to talk to your neighbors. Ask them to pull out their card. Tell them this is a national ID system. Don't let them think that this is a state issued card that has no connection with the federal government whatsoever. This is under control of the federal government. And then talk to your state legislators and talk to your members of Congress. If you have the ability and the interest, we'd love to do one of two things. Have you help us fund ads, Facebook and Twitter ads, that we can get out the message more broadly even than a billboard. But the other thing is, billboards are kind of exciting, and they see a lot of eyes, and we're very careful about them, where we put them and how we use them. And then use social media. We've got to get the American people to understand that, they've got to see the net. We've got to help them see the net. So record everything that happens and send us your stories. So that's really what y'all have to do.
Okay, and to know what we need to do at the state level, basically, just to reiterate, so tell me if I'm right, we are still the United States of America, but we still have a 10th Amendment, which means that as a state, we are not required to do what the federal government tells us to do. So we need, as individuals, to ask our state legislators to remove us from the Real ID system. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay.
And if they get the timeline there, the Real ID history, and just look at it, 2007 to 2009, about 30 states said no to the federal government, and there it stopped, except for the, undercover actions of the DMV, who are illegally moving the entire system forward against their own state laws. And they should, I don't know who they were, but they should have been charged with violating state laws by doing that.
Well, I think we need to look into that, because our governor, who is not a personal freedom advocate at all, has changed our DMV system to, instead of individual tag agencies, now we're under one system. Isn't it Access Oklahoma, Michael? What is
Service,
it?
Service Oklahoma.
Service Oklahoma. And I feel certain that was just another way to get us to more easily input.
Conform.
Just to be more conformy.
Yeah. And
so
I think Savannah Maddox, I think that's her name, in Kentucky. She might have a bill. She certainly had lots of tweets about her intention to move back to individual DMV offices around the state. I think she's concerned about Real ID, but she's also concerned about the fact that just like created huge lines, because instead of having them all over the state, there were just a few regional places that you could go to get a driver's license. So I think she wanted to alleviate that problem. But I also, if I'm correct, she's also concerned about the Real ID.
Well, Twila, you've been a blessing to have on today. Thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate it. And I mean, very well attended podcast again this morning, because I know people here in Oklahoma, the majority of us are not interested in this, and we need to make it stop. But you gave us some really specific things now that we can go forward and do, and a way to understand it. And your explanation to me actually helped me, because now I probably will renew my passport, which I was concerned about doing because I thought there was still some overlap. But what you've helped me to see is the Real ID is the worst part, because then that just becomes everything all on one card.
Centralizing factor.
That's what they want. They want the Real ID. They don't want you using your passport. You're not going to use your passport at the gas station or, to buy a gun, or right. That is just to leave the country and come on back in. And they know that. I will say the other thing that you can do if you decide to have, and we would certainly work with the senators, but we do testify in other states, but we also speak. So, if you ever had a Real ID rally, or get rid of the Real ID rally, feel free to let me know.
Well, I think we're hoping for an interim study with this senator. So absolutely, we will be back in touch for absolute surety, because after Christine Nome said that, you will see, she doesn't understand that some of us, me for sure, you don't tell me what I can't do, because I will immediately do whatever you tell me I can't do. And so so she pushed the wrong button with me that day. She said, you better do this or else. And not that I was a big fan of hers anyway. But that was the end of that. And so now I am just on a tear to get back to where we were before in Oklahoma, which was we said no.
Right. Yep. And you might look up the history, and we could certainly help you with that. You might look up the history to say who said no. Who was on the bill to say no? Is that person still around? What could they do, and what would they be willing to do if they had people behind them and they knew it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Twila, again, God bless you. Thank you so much for being with us today. We so do appreciate you. You've been a blessing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And lovely to meet you both.
Thank you. You as well.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I have a couple bits of information here.
Okay, hold on 1 second, because we've got such a huge audience, and I want to make sure that we get in what we need to get in. And so Tammy put it up too. So this is, you can refuserealid.org. You can do that too, just in case you can't remember the other. You can do refuserealid.org. So I'm going to throw that up here too. But you can see she's got such great stuff up on this website. We just really need to make sure people are getting there, and I'll put it up on the website today, so don't worry, it'll be up there as well. But do these things for sure. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Michael. Pardon me.
I just wanted to hit a couple things that I was looking up while she was on there. First, let's go back to that 2005, the very first Real ID bill. Here's our two Oklahoma co-sponsors. Ernest Istook and John Sullivan.
John Sullivan. You know where John Sullivan is now, right?
Jail?
No. Oh, are you kidding me?
I
That
don't
he's
know.
the head of the Oklahoma Dam Authority. That's where John Sullivan is.
All
What
right.
is
Well,
it called? It's the. I mean, it's huge. Anyway,
there's
that's where.
our two
Yeah.
Oklahoma culprits in the co-sponsoring of that bill. Here's the actual Oklahoma, like Service Oklahoma website. Real IDs are optional. They literally say it right there. But I want to bring up this quote. This is in the Oklahoman. They wrote this article on the 7th. So when the Real ID was supposed to be coming in, this is Emily Hill, who's the director of communications. And so she's talking about, can I return Real ID? So I just want to come down here. Oklahoma allows individuals to voluntarily switch from Real ID compliant driver's licenses or state IDs to non-compliant credential.
For
do so,
$25, they're going to
Yeah.
make money off us either way. It's all people. It's all about money and control.
Yeah.
Data is control and money. They just love the money because they get to do whatever they want with it. So
Yeah. So literally you just go back to your tag agency and you just say, get rid of my Real ID. Here's $25. They retake your picture, give you the exact same license, which is now non-credentialed, which is okay because we're non-credentialed, Jenny. We're not credentialed like the Oklahoman here. We're non-credentialed. But anyway, she says right in there that you don't have to have the Real ID.
But again, it's kind of like, there are people that I know who are lovely people who are rule followers. They're just, they're not you and me. They're rule followers.
Yeah, but if they're lying about the rules in the first place, that's the thing. They're lying about the rules.
But again, I don't think you get through to these people who believe that it's convenient for them. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
because you've got to we talk about it all the time on this program. Convenience is a killer. And granted, it's a C and a K, but they sound the same. Convenience is a killer. And that's how they get us every time with everything. Oh, but you'll be able to do this. It'll be so much easier.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take it.
Well,
Stop. Not your whole life isn't meant to be simple and easy. Sometimes you just have to go, I'll do it the same way. We had some really great comments, and you guys know we love our audience. I just didn't want to kind of detract from what Twila had to say because I know, she can be on here all day. And so I will totally go back and put some comments in, but I just wanted to, Robert's been saying some, this was important.
Well, John Boy
to
too. You know what? We should have hit that comment that John Boy said. The further implications, is this going to tie into the UN Agenda 2030? Things like that. I wonder if she knows anything about that.
Well, I would have to say it's all tied in because the globalist agenda is the globe. So, I mean, honestly, I think he was being rhetorical. I mean, I won't say knowing John Boy, but I mean, from the comments he's made on this show, I think he might have been a rhetorical question because yes, all of this stuff is just mainly for control. But there was another one that I wanted to, Robert. I'm not sure passport is as innocent as it may seem. Even new passports look completely different from 20 years ago. And I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Robert. I still have I'm not comfortable with that, but I do the thing that I wanted to point out, which is why I kind of got her to close with that, is that they can't do with a passport what they can do with the Real ID because the system isn't set up that way. And that's not where I'm not saying it couldn't change. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not saying they don't take you a facial recognition photo because they do. But it can't be what the Real ID is, which is the precursor to the one card to do everything. You can only get healthcare if you have the card. You can only buy your groceries on Thursday now because of your card. And does it not bother anybody that it's a gold star? Believe how some Jewish associations aren't having an absolute fit. A gold star, really? I don't get it. Robert also said 99% of my family, friends, and coworkers are rule followers. And the thing about it is, and I don't want to put these people down. I mean, I have them in my family. They're sweet people, but I don't know how you get through to them that the government isn't a benevolent thing. It doesn't have your own best interests at heart anymore. I mean, constitutionally, that was the whole plan, but we don't even have that anymore. So, I do love what Stephanie said about her husband's going to be switching. So that's a good thing. Tell people to yell when and that's the problem. People yell when you hold up the lines. It's what I said about the facial thing. When I went to the airport initially to leave out for Utah, and they did that so fast that it kind of, discombobulated me, but I would have stood there and gone, why did you do that? And I would have made a stink. But people, because I don't care if there are people behind me, they can scream all they want, but people won't do that. Normal people, like Robert said, 99% of them are rule followers. They don't want people to go, hey, shut up, lady, and move on. I'm like, I don't care. So long as you didn't say old lady, I'm fine with that. And Julie wants to remind us that government is the mob, which of course it is. John says the same thing happened with CDLs if you were an American citizen. Yes, I heard about this, but then what they're doing is letting all of these people from outside the country come in on these HB1 visas and drive. I guess what? Because Americans wouldn't get the real ID to be truck drivers? What a pile of crap. Sorry. There were a whole bunch of other comments. We had some really good
there was a lot of comments.
And Julie points out, and I think that's, I'm glad I went back to this comment, because don't forget, I asked her to explain why, as a follower of Jesus, we don't want the real ID. And she explained it succinctly. We are not to have that identification that does those things that John explained in his revelation about buying and selling and all these different things, and to have the, and you can say, well, it's not a chip under my skin. It doesn't say anything like that. It just basically says a thing. It could be anything. And if this one card attaches you to everything, how is not that the thing?
Yeah.
Oh, and my spirit, Jen Annie was talking about, are you a nurse? Is that how this came? Because she said these young nurses don't even know how to chart when the computers don't work. I love to say this is a pen and this is a paper chart. Epic charting is linked to every hospital that has Epic charting. SSM, OUMC, Mercy, etc. are all on Epic. I think even Norman Regional finally got Epic. At triage desks, they get vitals, assess you, and your registrar gets ID, and insurance collects dollars, and that's absolutely the case. When you go to the airport, they have facial recognition to verify who you are. In Tulsa, they put up signs that you can opt out, but no other airport is saying this. They did say, hold on. Now, this is me going from last September, right? So I haven't been to the airport since last September, but I do know that after they stole my photo, I went looking, and it says down at the bottom, you can opt out, just like Twila was explaining. But what are you going to do? Stand there and go, hold on.
Delete that.
Oh, wait, it says I can yeah, or say delete that. You have to
delete that photo.
I mean, it's
except it probably already goes into the cloud and it's gone before they can even do anything.
Well, I tend to think about that, and that was what I was going to ask her. I think we got off topic. She was such a great interview. She had so much information.
Yeah.
but we were talking, you remember I brought up the ALPRs, right?
Yeah.
Because I said, when they keep the stuff in the system, they share it. And she was explaining that, yeah, they do that same thing. So I'm wondering how, since they're not really even allowed to be taking our photos anyway, does that stick in this stuff like the ALPRs? Do all these airports have MOUs with other airports? I mean, I think it's IDEMIA that's the problem. IDEMIA, IDEMIA is the private company that is being used as a vendor for all these services. And don't forget, vendors bad. Vendors bad. How are you going to fix a vendor? It's outside the government system. How are you going to get to that? Vendors bad, people. Start remembering that. Say that at night before you go to bed. Vendors bad.
Yeah.
But it's true. I think the fake nurses was a farce to push fingerprints in every state for healthcare staff. Oh, geez. And I seem to remember that, but you'd have to catch me up on that. Didn't that surround a kidnapping of an infant or something? I still just cannot figure out how anyone could fake being a nurse for even 20 minutes. There's so much information we have to constantly critically think about and apply to the next step we make in caring for a patient. The Real ID has more data linking than I think is easily understood or advertised to us. I don't have a Real ID, but those I work with comment how when they scan your Real ID at the airport and TSA knows where you're going without seeing your boarding pass. Yeah, again, but they do that to our own Oklahoma ID. And I think I didn't explain it to her well enough, was how easily is what we have right now pulled into the Real ID system is what I meant to say. But that's the other thing that we have to do, Michael, for upcoming next session, is to make them get rid of Service Oklahoma. That has to go back to individuals. That has to go away. Service Oklahoma, it's under OHMS. I mean, how much badder could any of that be? It couldn't be any badder. No more batter. So that has to go away. And we have to quit giving our thumbprints and facial recognition. That has to stop, because that's just another precursor and road down which they put us. So that has to stop too.
And just to mention real quick, from a friend of ours who I'm not going to name, but I looked at a lot of those OHMS board meetings during all these campaigns, and not one time did they ever even discuss reducing a fee or anything. I mean, every single one of those board meetings was like, yes, increase fees. Yes, add this fee. Yes, add this fee. Yes, increase here. Yeah, I mean, I read a ton of those board meetings over at OHMS that had to do with that, and they're just fee happy. But that all comes out of Service Oklahoma.
Well, and it's ridiculous to charge you a $25 charge to get your driver's license back. Because it costs like $45 to get a Real ID.
Well, I hate these stupid drivers. The license plate changes. What do we need to keep changing license plates for and paying another $15 or $20 for a stupid license plate?
Because they keep adding the paint that they can pick up on the toll bridges and, toll whatever. And it's just
you mean more surveillance. They don't have enough surveillance on our current license plate. They need more surveillance.
But of course, it's all about surveillance, because surveillance is tied to data. Data is tied to money. Money is tied to power. It's all a circle.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about the gold star, the first thing that flashed into my mind was just like the little kid in first grade that's the teacher's pet that's always getting the gold star, for everything. That's what popped into my mind.
And Lisa says this is a new level of soft tyrannical horror. And 5 years from now, the sheep will be bleeding their love of the convenience of Real ID. Not if we can help it, Lisa. And this was kind of funny, Tammy. A ping for thee, but not for me. Pretty good. Yeah. I like that one. And this is another good. I read this one. I couldn't throw it in. No one acts like federal government is limited. Nobody, not people, not the government themselves. Just wait until 9 o'clock on Monday morning when we pull up the video and show you the video of the Oklahoma Senate Education Committee and the way that they attempted to get Chris Vandenhend to appoint him, or to not appoint, to confirm him to the State Board of Education. You guys will have to see our special program that the girls and I are doing at 9 a.m. on Monday morning to go over that video, because if you really want to know how your elected officials think of you, that's where you need to be, because I think you'll be shocked. I honestly do believe that some of you will be legitimately shocked to know how little these people think of you. Those that don't comply believe it, and those that rule don't believe it. And I agree with that as well. And that is for people who don't understand, like Gracie says, you know that they're doing a facial identification photo of you if they make you remove your eyewear. So just so you know. Which it would actually be the thing. That's it. So you wear eyeglasses, just some little cheap, readers even. You wear those to get on the plane. And if they say, remove your glasses, please, you go, no, not doing that. Right? Then at least you know that what they're doing to you, and they're getting a facial recognition picture.
I love to opt out.
That's all I want to do for pretty much everything. Sarah says it's being proposed to add a link to your health records on the Real ID, in case of a medical emergency in a car accident. And what Sarah says, and don't forget, Twila said that. She said that's the whole goal, is to get everything on there. It's the, the one way it becomes the mark of the beast is by even starting it. And then they just keep adding to, but you know what? Hey, Michael, you know what? Wouldn't it be like super convenient if you were at the grocery store and all you had to do was use this one card? You didn't even need your credit cards anymore or your debit card from your bank. You just take this one and you use it for everything. Isn't that convenient?
Sounds like a real winner to me.
Isn't that great?
You don't need to be responsible for having your wallet, cash.
Why
ID.
would you want to do? Oh, Michael, you use the word responsibility. What is the matter with you? We'll have to have a discussion after we're over.
Just show up as an automaton and consume. Just keep consuming.
But I want to fly. But I want my meal. But I want my...
Well, that convenience factor, it's so built into our current culture, Jenny. I just hate it that everything has to be so instantaneous and so convenient. I like the challenge of something being hard. I actually like it. I like to have to work on something for a bit of time and overcome it in one way or another.
Why? That's just exhausting, Michael. Why would you want to do that? It's exhausting. Oh, here we go. Service Oklahoma was the setup for the Real ID rollout because the independent tag agencies didn't have the money or the technology input. That's good. Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. That's exact. That makes 150,000% sense. You have to do this though. Whoa. Because it was all part of the plan, right? I will not, neither will I, Stephanie.
And I told you that when my son just got his driver's license, my 16-year-old, they literally, I wasn't there with them. They literally said, you have to get it. So we will be going down and reversing that, this probably next week.
Yeah. And I would do it ASAP. And, I have family members who have them, and, I am going to make sure everybody has a copy of this video that they can watch at their, leisure to maybe become a little more informed about it. But I'm not going to start. I love my family. I'm blessed to have a family that I love, and they're great people. And I'm not going to cause a fight over it. But golly, guys, We're losing our freedoms for so many reasons. And one of them is what Reagan said, generationally, you lose freedoms if they're not taught to the upcoming generation. And we don't do that because the Marxists have infiltrated our public schools and shoot all of that stuff out so that they can get vapid people who are only concerned about their pronouns, because they're very easily led, those kinds of people. So we know the reason why we're doing it. We just have to get people to understand the reason why they're doing it, see the reason and the purpose, and then say, nope, not getting on board that train. Thank you.
Well,
Please drive through.
Yeah, and I think it's important to just reiterate what Twila said, that the Real ID is not, it's not that they already have all this information in one way or another. It's going to now all be consolidated into one place. Yeah, they may have aspects of all this information across all these different departments, or, corporately at hospitals or wherever. But now that you have a single unifying place and everything's going to be digitized, it's all going to go into that singular centralized database that's going to be completely accessible to whoever has access to it across the world.
Thank you. You said that beautifully, by the way. I mean, that was so well said. Way better than me. So such a good job there. Yes. Sarah says this: I've noticed a surprisingly hopeful trend at airports. The private clear biosecurity lines are less popular than the government program for frequent flyers. And actually, that's good, because you remember we were talking to Kayla Blount. And Kayla she signed up for that. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about it. Yeah. And it's not because she's not a good person or whatever. It's this, you can get food delivered to your home. Why would you want to leave? It's that, it's the convenience thing. Gracie said something interesting here.
Hey, it's 10:45. I got that meeting here in just a touch. So I got to go. So I'm glad to be on with Twila and you guys today for sure.
Thanks, Michael. And you have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Okay, bye.
Bye. So Gracie said this, which I think is really interesting. She said, forehead represents your mindset and right hand represents your oath or commitment. And what did they tell you? Which thumb? And then they take your fate. That's very interesting thought. John says, I went through it, renewing my CD. Really was a nightmare. Went a couple of times with paperwork to make them happy. When talking to others there, they were going through the same. St. Francis, my chart on Epic too. Yeah, it's just and I don't know how. Stop. Thank you for helping educate. Sure. Well, thank you for your comments too, Sarah. Those were super interesting and helpful. Yes, we've got to figure out how to keep our private information private. And the only way to do that is to educate. I want the new red plate so I can put little circles with lines to it to put on the lines. John Boy, good night. Monday morning rope broadcast coming soon. You're not going to want to miss that. I'm putting out stuff about that today because you are not going to want to miss that. I haven't even watched the whole thing. I was just getting input from my friends, and I was like, I can't even believe that this is happening. So you people are going to want to be here for sure. Now that you mentioned exactly what people around me were there. Plug into the Borg. Yes. Why doesn't anybody understand it like that? You know what, though, Julia? Maybe it is that maybe it's our age and we only remember Star Trek: The New Generation or something. I don't know. And these young people, that's silly. I don't know, but that's exactly what it is. It's becoming the Borg, and safe and convenient. Let's all keep in mind the Bible says it's a mark on the forehead, okay, or a mark on your right hand, not an abstract idea. Okay, that's an excellent point, Lisa. Thank you for saying that. And that isn't something someone will do accidentally. It's a choice, and that's an excellent point. And thank you so much for bringing that up. I think my point in saying those kinds of things is, the more we do that, the closer we get to that kind of thing. And if you're going to say, you know, I am going to take the real idea. How far away are you from, oh, but if you put it in my palm, you know, then I get to buy my groceries. So it's just a part of the whole system. But thank you for being succinct and clear about that, because that's exactly correct. I lost my CC recently, and when I replaced it, most of my billers already had No, really? Now, what's a CC though? Am I missing something? I'm sure I'm missing something. Tell me what that is. But yes, that's another thing I don't like about iPhone. All of my family has iPhones, and they're always like, get an iPhone. And I'm like, Samsung is bad. Not saying that it's not. I'm not saying pretty much all of them are at this point. But an iPhone, they have all this eye crack. You know, oh, but this eye crack goes with this eye crack. And if you get all the cracks together, you can really, I don't like that. It makes me, making you wear your seatbelt in a car. This is why I like you. It's just like we talked about the ALPR cameras. Why did they want to do the ALPR cameras? Remember, it was to protect you. It was to protect you from having an uninsured motorist crash into you. You can get uninsured motorist on your own. Okay. You don't need the government to help you do that. So it's all a ruse. Every time you hear these things that are good for you, you get to decide what's good for you in a real free country. If we were playing the freedom game like it's supposed to be played under the Constitution, we would not have to play the game of, oh, it's for my own good, and so it's public safety, and they're telling me. We wouldn't have to play that game. No. I get to decide what's okay for me. You get to decide what you're safe with. Some people need bubble wrap. Lots of us do not. It ain't easy being the black. No joke. No joke. We can all meet for whiskey or some tea at my house, but keep being that loud voice, because some will come around. And I think that's a really good point, Lisa. I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to speak out and to block up the lines at the TSA. I'm not saying that's easy. Please don't think that I'm this unfeeling person. I get it. This isn't easy, but we're here to back you up and at least make you feel like there are other people out there feeling the same way. That's what we're here for. We're here to educate you and back you up. That's it. All right. Fines. I love these comments because, yeah, fines for your safety and for non-compliance. Oh yeah, at Tulsa, they were pushing the clear security to us. Yeah, and again, it's another thing where you have to say no, thank you. I wonder how this affects corporate travelers like IBM or Northam employees, just to name a few. I bet that is kind of a problem. Believe in Hebrew translates as buy your life. It's not just an acknowledgement. Credit card. Sorry. But that is that's a problem. That's and I'm sorry, but we can't carry. I hate saying this, please. And you can come after me in the comments. I'm totally worthy of that. But carrying cash around is such an inconvenience. It really is. And there are so many places that I actually, and it's not just Amazon, so don't go there. There are several places that I buy things from on the web. And you can't, here, hold on. In 15 days, you'll have gotten my cash or my, whatever check, cashier's check or whatever. And then you can send me the stuff. Then it's just such a pain. And I hate that because I don't have a credit card. I just have a debit card. And boy, if you get into trouble with that, like somebody, which they've done before with me, man, if they do that to your debit card, you can be in trouble if you don't catch that right away, because the bank just can't keep, pouring money. They don't even get it back. So I get it. It's not I get it. It's not good. I asked because those companies will be sending their lobbyists. I did have a coworker that went to jail for not what? Constantly kept getting tickets, refused to pay them. They got a warrant for his arrest, to which the next time he got pulled over, he got a trip to the slammer. How are we free? I need people to keep answering these questions for me because I'm not seeing it. I mean, it was like the talk I gave at the Capitol where I was screaming, tell me how you're free. If you can't own your own property, if you have to have a license to do somebody's hair or nails, if you can't have the gains of your own industry because you're taxed by your income, if you're all of these things and more, if I have to get insurance, the state makes me get insurance. If the state makes me do, how am I free? And so when people say things like, well, we're the freest country in the United States, or the United States, we're the freest country. We're the freest country in the world. Do you know that we're not in the Freedom Index, which is put out regularly? I think it's once a year. We're down to, I think, 15. 15. So don't go, oh, America's the freest country and we're the reddest state. No, you'll get so much pushback from me because I can give you actual factuals on why that isn't true. I'm not just going to say, oh, I just don't like that term. No, there are actual factuals as to why we're no longer the reddest state and why we're no longer the freest country. So, oh, and yeah, and nobody takes $100 bills. Or if they do, they make you feel like you're a criminal. Hold on. I'm like, I just got it from my bank. I didn't make it in my backyard. The seatbelt helmet laws were enacted to lower costs because so many were uninsured, costing taxpayers money when they were insured and ending up at county hospitals. Well, that's very interesting. And yes, that was part of the argument, and right. But if the system worked the way the system did, and we didn't validate bad choices with taxpayer dollars, maybe people wouldn't continue to make bad choices. Just posing that as a thought. And there is no true freedom. There's only freedom in Christ. And we have to remember that there is only freedom in Christ. But dadgummit, I would rather be more free in my regular personal life. So I'll just say. And Robert said, what's wrong with the cash is you can't get $100 bills out of the ATM. And oh, that's a great point. Yes, not only do we have inflationary issues, but then they make it because of Dodd-Frank under Obama. Remember what Dodd-Frank did? You put all those rules on banks and all those things because we didn't want money laundering going on. And don't forget, do not forget, criminals are getting real IDs. I was just told by Congressman Josh Burkeen not very long ago that the Congress already knows that Chinese gang members are getting real IDs. So is this really to keep illegal aliens off of airplanes, or is this to control American citizens? I'll leave that out there for you to think about. Okay, last one, and then we're out of here. Insurance is a racket. Do you know, Dave and I often talk about how much more money we'd have in a year if we weren't paying 27 different kinds of insurance. So I completely agree with you. All right, guys, it's about 2 hours, and I hate to get into, yes, there we go, Lisa. When Finland and New Zealand are rated as more free than us. I don't know, though. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. We'll have to look more into it and see how the freedom, it's the Freedom Index. So you can look it up. We'll have to see how the Freedom Index is calculated, because you may possibly be right. But I'm telling you, just from my personal experience and just what I'm seeing here in Oklahoma, this isn't freedom. It's simply not. And I'm not saying freedom is you get to do whatever the heck you want, because we've talked about that on the show a million billion times. Your behavior and stuff cannot affect the enjoyment of your neighbor's life as well. So we're not just free to do whatever we want. I mean, in a real true society, we would, if we don't believe in Christ, at least we would follow those tenets about how to be kind to one another and how to have personal responsibility. And once we did that, those kinds of things, we wouldn't have to worry so much about this. But the problem is we don't want to play by those rules anymore. And governments were instituted among men to protect freedom, not to keep bad people from being bad. Yet we seem to be having a problem understanding what is good. So don't know. And I say, kind of in a way, insurance is kind of a form of gambling, isn't it? All right. Well, people, it was so good to have everybody on today. I am so glad we had a wonderful audience again today. It took a little bit for you to come in, so I don't think as many saw the beginning of Twila as might want to. And she was in on right at about 9:10. We tried to get her in early so we could get going. So you'll want to go back and review the earlier part of the podcast, because wow, she's great. And we will definitely be keeping in touch with that organization, because we need to get our freedom back here in the state. But don't forget, you are responsible in some ways for your own freedom, and don't get that real ID. Just say no. And if you have it, go take it back and say, thank you. I don't need it, nor do I want it. And you may have it back. I just want my regular unfree driver's license at this point. So anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. Please make sure that you tune in right here, 9 a.m. Monday morning. So not our regular time. This is going to be a special, to see for yourself how the Senate Education Committee acted during the hearing for the seating of Chris Hand on the State Board of Education. You won't want to miss that, I promise you. So be here then. And thank you, Julia. We appreciate you always. And we will see everybody again on Monday morning at 9 a.m. And until then, have a lovely weekend. And thanks again for tuning in. You're the best.